to the RunRX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running.
Welcome back to the RunRX podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I'm here with Coach Valerie. Coach, we had a question that came through support, and the gentleman was gracious enough to trust us and sign up for our membership. But I thought it was a really good question. He's an older gentleman, and he said, I have arthritis. Can you help me? And my initial response is, of course we can. It's in, and I did say it's in your movement. And we've helped many people with similar issues. But I found it very, for me, if I were him, like, of course you're going to say you can help me. Of course you're going to say, trust me. But I have faith in my product. But at the same time, if you're not me, right, if you haven't gone through the membership, how did you answer him? Granted, he had already signed up and trusted us, which I really appreciated. But how do you answer that student, that potential student that says, I have been diagnosed with something like arthritis, like compartment syndrome? We had somebody come through with compartment syndrome, and I know we were able to help her. How can you answer that with such confidence that we know we help you other than just the years of experience? I know you had a good answer. So can you answer for him? Like,
sure.
How do we help you?
Right. Well, and first of all, I want to say, and we tell people straight up, no way am I a doctor or anything like that. You're already running or wanting to run or trying to run. So you're obviously somewhere where you are still active. And that's huge.
Right.
So what we're going to do is make you more efficient in your movement. And, and there's a big, big difference between osteoarthritis and compartment syndrome. Compartment syndrome is truly from inefficient movement. That's why people get compartment syndrome. So if they're able to
Can
change
you explain
their
briefly what that is for people that maybe don't
compartment
understand?
syndrome, it's when fluid gets trapped in the lower part of the leg. It's extremely painful. And what happens is it gets trapped in there. And if they can't release it, if it doesn't get flushed back out, they usually have to have surgery to remove the fluid. And I learned about this, by the way, in the Army, in the military. I was not in the military. However, I teach pose method of running. And pose method is the only method with a study that shows it reduces stress on the knees impact by 53%. The study was done years and years ago. And when I started learning pose, it was purely for me to help my clients run pain-free. I had no idea. It was, the excitement behind it. And from that study, Dr. Romanoff, the founder, started working with the U.S. military, the U.S. Army, which now implements the pose method in the boot camps because they had so many running injuries. And one of the biggest ones was compartment syndrome, because a lot of the guys and gals were running in the boots. And tight boots and tension and incorrect movement, the combination of the three was causing the pain. And I personally got to work with a guy. I mean, I was so honored. He was in the beginning stages of compartment syndrome, and he said his I don't know the order, but his sergeant told him, you either need to fix this, find someone to help you run, or you're not going to get to move up in your next level of career, and he came to see me. We did the same thing I give everybody else. There's no magic, guys. Everybody has to go through the same process. And sure enough, he was able to reduce the swelling. He got more efficient in his movement. He was just making mistakes in his movement, guys. And Romanoff always calls it, when you play against gravity, you lose, and you lose hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's the thing. So yeah, experience is a huge reason why I feel confident, but it's also when it's used by a whole military for them to run pain-free, you're thinking, I bet it works. It's also, by the way, the only running method accredited for physical therapists.
That was the other thing. That's so huge, guys. That's really huge.
And a lot of the military PTs are pose method instructors. And so it's because they want to do preventative measure. And this is it's a big thing. It's like we want to prevent those injuries before they happen. And these kids are getting, I mean, all ages, but coming into boot camp and they're getting stress fractures, femoral stress fractures that you would normally see in women like 60 years old, we're seeing in like 17 and 18-year-old girls. So it's
Oh,
like
wow.
figuring out, helping people be more efficient in their movement. And we work with lay people, like we work with just regular runners, just runners that want to run pain free. And so we know we're applying the correct method. Like we know we're giving you the right tools to what you need. Of course, what's also funny is I am turning 53 in 2 days. Guess what I have? I have osteoarthritis. I never thought I would.
Right.
My dad has it. And so what do I do? Do I just go, oh well, my dad has it, so that's the way it goes?
Yeah. So I mean,
Absolutely not. I'm going to do exercises and movement. I know I'm going to still have arthritis. That's the way it goes. I'm going to work on movements that help me keep moving better. I'm going to make sure I work on my mobility. I'm going to make sure I work on my range of motion. These are the things. And we're also, I mean, telling you, like the guy that came in, you talked about, all right? So he has osteoarthritis. He said his knees hurts when he runs. And so he sent me his gait analysis. Okay, guys, he's on the ground twice as long as he needs to be. And what's important
right.
about that, so it's taking him 8 frames of ground time each time he puts his foot down to when he picks it back up. We're
Wow.
going to bring
Yeah.
that down to 4.
Right.
We know we can do it. We do it. We do it to be this all the time. That doesn't mean he's going to run twice as fast, just so you understand that.
Right.
Now, I'm sure he'll run a little more efficient. Of course, he'll probably pick up the pace a little, but that's not the goal. The goal is to reduce his ground contact time, reduce impact on his run, not by cushioning his shoes, but by making him pick up his feet. Like, you've
Right.
got to train people what to do when they run. You've got to teach them the movement and then help them get better at the movement. And then when they do that, while they're doing that, you're putting yourself in a better position. That's what takes the stress off the knees. And by the way, he came into the Zoom yesterday, and there was another man in there, 65-year-old Jim, who has a hip replacement. And Jim's doing so well. I mean, he's worked so hard to bring his body back in line and work on his strength. And that was really motivating for him to see that. Because
that was good that Jim was on there, because I did kind of mention, didn't know how old Jim was, but I did mention that we had one in the group. We have other lifetime members that, are definitely older runners, that have been able to overcome injuries and things like that. So that was good that Jim got to meet him, or that he got to meet Jim rather.
Yeah. And everyone told him how hard they'd had to work through their own injury.
Yeah.
Because, we've got people, you name it, we've seen it. I mean, it's really the plantar fasciitis. We have one guy that just came through. He's had plantar fasciitis for 2 years. And during week 1, he's saying to me, I can't believe it's not already fixed. And
yeah.
And I said back to him, I said, I know it's frustrating. I wish I could fix it in a week. But there's a reality that as you change your movement, the pain will, by the way, he's in his 2nd month, and he laughs
he's
about
fine.
it. Now we laugh about it. He stayed in, and he feels so much better already. And it's only been a little over a month. So I was like, give it the first month and let's see. That's the other thing that with an injury versus let's go back to the first topic. So like we talked about arthritis versus like compartment syndrome, right? Compartment syndrome is a movement injury. Arthritis is something you have. So if it's something you have, like this is a condition I have, then we say, okay, you have this condition. Let's help you work where you can. Like wherever you can work right now, this is where you're going to work. That's all you can do. And a lot of our drills are static. They're in place. You're not even running. And that's, what's fun. It's kind of not funny for us, for me, because I'm so long into this. People in the beginning they don't want to believe that you can learn how to run without running. And I'm like, of course you can. It's just it's a movement pattern. And now you have to go out and run to get better at running, of course, but to learn the movement, so you can actually, if you're hurt, you're injured, you can work on the movement even seated to get started. It's amazing
Yeah.
what you can do. So that as you're progressing back to recovery, you're going to be ready for that run, right? That's what we encourage people. We're like, don't even run, just do the drills, do the practice, do the movement, let your body, let you know when it's ready to run. And then if you have, like we said, that's with injury, with a condition, so arthritis or something that's, whatever the injury is. Let's start with where you are. Something feels painful, you back off, we look at the movement and see, why is it painful? So for example, Al said, it hurts my knees when I pull. So pulling uses the hamstring. So if he's feeling his knee, he's not pulling correctly. So I said, let me see your pull. So he showed me, and he was using his hip flexor. Once I could
Okay.
explain to him the difference, he could see it and feel it. And that's the challenge too, guys. Like, part of the excitement of working with people is helping them help themselves. He has to find his hamstring. As you get older, you need to know where your glutes are and your hamstrings. And a lot of
Right.
people fail on that, and they walk with their hips. And that's what he's doing. And now his knees hurt. And then he's blaming it on the running. It's not the running, it's how he's moving. And so, yes, he has arthritis, but we can minimize the impact. Like I said, he's on the ground 8 frames. That could be, my goodness, that could be, up to a minute a mile just pounding, right? So so he's going to make a nice change for his life too. But just so you guys know, like, it doesn't mean it's easy. Like, you first have to accept, that there's a different way of movement, and then let us help you find that movement. And then you'll be so excited at how you can move. That's what I see. That's what we see all the time.
Right. And that's where he was really, I did kind of say, like, listen to our podcast, because I didn't really want to answer that specific thing. And as nicely as I could, and thankfully I obviously was nice enough that it didn't offend him. Because it can be so frustrating. And I get how, because I've had knee surgeries, I get how you feel nobody understands what you're going through. And I get that. So I just asked him to be coachable and to listen to our podcast and maybe to search where we talk about injuries, so that you don't, and I think I said it in a way that I said, so that you don't become your injury, and you allow
Right.
yourself to change the movement. And it was within, so he must have listened to a few podcasts and then signed up. But he did come back and say, I am coachable. I do want to learn. And obviously he is being very responsive, which I think is wonderful. But that's a big part of it, guys, is we're not doctors, right? We just see, and Valerie in particular, if she watches you run those few frames, she can tell you, like she saw within 8 frames, exactly the movement pattern that this gentleman was doing, and how a simple thing can fix it. Now you might be thinking, oh great, I just need a gait analysis and then I'll be fixed. But as it takes time to relearn that pattern, right? Just knowing, okay, I'm doing this, I'm using my hip flexors instead of my hamstring, or I'm staying on the ground too long, or I'm reaching for the ground. That's always a reacher person, is always
Yeah.
looking for the ground, that fear of falling and not using gravity. We get that so much. But it doesn't fix overnight, and I part of my mindset thing is always kind of like, guys, if you started learning how to not write with your right hand but write with your left hand, you might be able to do a few letters, but over time it would take longer, right? You'd be having to practice it, and then your left hand might get like really sore. You might be exhausted from the relearning of the movement of just writing with your left hand. And if I said, go learn to write with your left hand, I want you to go try it for 4 hours and I expect you to be proficient, you'd think I was nuts. But people think that they can come in and get a gait analysis or spend a weekend with you on our clinics, which do help a lot of people, but that's going to make it like all of a sudden click. And it helps. But you like to say that it takes about 2 to 3 months, right? That's why we used to do it as a 3 month minimum, but it takes a while of constant practice, right, to kind of get it to click, right?
Well,
Can you
it's
speak
like
to that?
anything else. Well, there's a couple. Well, first of all, instead of giving a time frame, what people have, it's just like what you were saying. Yes, it takes initially, there has to be two things that are happening. One, you have to change your thought of movement while you're changing your movement pattern. And so in the beginning, it really is, it's just really different. I mean, you feel like you're relearning, and then there's a stubbornness. Like learning to run is not normal. Like I know how to run. So you feel so awkward in a movement that you've done
Yeah.
forever. So this is why for people it takes longer than just 1 hour session. And what I found, and that was really frustrating, is because the concept's really clear. You know, it makes sense. If you tell somebody, hey, pick your foot up from the ground instead of pounding it into the ground, you can just hear how much better that sounds. Would you rather go
Right.
pounding the pavement, or would you rather enjoy some time in flight? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and we see all those pictures of runners with their legs in the air and spread out and all that stuff. And I'm like, is that actually how you're feeling when you run? You know, because that wasn't how I was feeling when I found pose. And most people, when they find us, like you said, there's so much information out there. They're so frustrated when we get them that sometimes
Yeah.
the whole first
Especially if they're
month,
injured.
yeah, the whole first month is just changing their perception of their own movement pattern. You know, so
Right.
many people come in and they're like, I have tight hips, my glutes don't fire, my hamstrings are weak, my calves are tight. So we're first dealing with the physical ailment that they feel is preventing them, right, from enjoying their run. So first we have to and help them understand that I promise a lot of this actually starts to go away as you work on your movement pattern. So then it's like that mindset shift. Okay, I'm going to start working on my movement pattern. And for some people, by the way, they get it like anybody else. If you work on the concept and then the movement, boy, that movement pattern becomes so much easier. But yeah, we find that
Right.
3 month mark is when we see that really exciting aha moment. Like now they're running.
Yeah. It's between
Now
the
it's
2 and
how you
3 months.
run.
It's like right about 6 weeks that they get that ding.
Yeah. Because the first week they hate me. And we
Yeah.
even told Al that on the Zoom yesterday. I'm like, I can tell you that every one of these people in the first few weeks, I not say hate. That's sorry, that's a strong word. They were
No, it's yeah.
they were frustrated with me,
I
and
am pulling is the thing I always say. I am pulling.
yeah, and so and then they're like, and then let's go back because this whole point is about injuries. They want to say to me, but Valerie, remember I have a bad calf, or Valerie, remember it's my hip. Valerie, remember, and I'm like,
Right.
I know every single one of your issues. I'm your coach. And I'm telling you that you're all going to benefit from what I give you. And that's the best part is when people finally realize it. Wow. Because I give everybody extra, whatever they need for their body part. I promise you, that's for what I'm here for. But this the movement pattern you learn together, and it's the same for all. And it's amazing how it makes your other injuries start to dissipate. You start to realize that you weren't focused on your movement, you were focused on your injury. So that's a
Right.
part of why it takes a little while. Yeah.
One
So
last
we are
question, but before we wrap up, is we've talked about how this is all based on the pose method, and you studied with Dr. Romanoff, but we don't call ours the pose method. We're the RunRX method, and we add that skill, strength, and self care. Can you give us like a quick 3 to 5 minute, like, why did you do that?
or
Why?
why
What made you come up with the RunRX, the skill, strength, and self care? To
well,
reinforce
because
like what we've talked about.
that's how because that's how their business is formatted. By the way, guys, a great relationship with Pose. I'm a master level Pose coach. I have worked with Dr. Romanoff. This is our 20th year. I mean, we're past 20 years now, and it's fantastic. I used to actually teach the Pose clinics. I was the Pose lady for years, and when they now they only teach military and physical therapy. So I went solo, got to be and became RunRX as my own little
Right.
brand. And a lot,
But what I was trying to ask. Sorry, I had a coughing attack. I had to mute myself there because I could not answer you better. What I meant was when you came up with how the skill, strength, and self care works to reinforce post fall pull, like it was because you found a way. You needed a way to just what they were teaching wasn't necessarily sticking on the long term. And so you developed a way to kind of overlap that, right? Like you go on kind
No,
of
no, no,
on,
no, 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 no.
no, that's
Because
not how you
they do
describe it.
they
Okay.
almost every bit of skill and strength I've learned from Dr. Romanoff that I teach
Okay.
in RunRX. I am a pose method, pose devoted. I mean, everyone
Yeah.
knows.
Devotee.
So I just don't use their name because they don't. I mean, let's just be honest about it. In fact, I'd love to have Dr. Romanoff on a podcast. They
Oh, that would
decided
be fabulous.
they decided they could only have a physical therapist teach pose. That's the only way they could be accredited for PT. So they basically told all the pose coaches, go be pose, but be your own name.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's
So I
so
just
so
wanted to
just
make
so
sure
you
people
guys know, I mean,
understood.
it is just to be fair, I just want to say that because everything that they do is fantastic and I'm a huge pose fan. What I do different, like where Valerie comes in is the way I teach, the way I cue,
Right.
the way I articulate, the way I put together strength programs, because I've added in, of course, because I'm me, my own workouts, right? My own programming. But my base of everything, I had to reshift all of my movement patterns when I met Dr. Romanoff. I had no idea I realized after I met him that I had just a wrong perception of movement. And it was a strange time because there wasn't internet back then or anything like that. And I was still very much into body parts. I was a marathoner, so I was really into long distance runs and all that. And so I had to practice on myself, right, and my members before I could buy in, kind of thing. So over the years, I will definitely say I've added the Valerie, and they would say it. They would say this is not pose
Yeah.
because they're
Well,
very
that's what I
particular.
kind of wanted to explain, and that's perfect.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I wanted. Was we are Pose Method, but we don't call ourselves Pose Method, and here's why. And what makes
because
you
my right.
special is the Valerie coaching.
Correct. And I've never stopped. Like once I started working on this type of movement pattern, and that's what's so important, guys. Like I met him, I started training pose in 1999 for my very first triathlon. I'd never heard of pose, Dr. Romanoff. I'd never done a triathlon. Bought a book, found the pose method in that book. It just had a picture of a girl doing a pull. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I took it a step further and called the book, called them, got the book and the video, and just started implementing that into my own running and then my clients. And anyway, I just kept going further. Finally, I got him to come to Austin for a clinic, 2004, and then it's history ever since. But what's
Yeah.
fascinating is we don't do the same workouts. It's the foundation of the movement that's so great. But I have taken, of course, it's mine in the sense that I've never stopped evolving the movements, not the pose, the fall, the pull. They are what they are. I cue better, I
Right.
believe. But the strength, I do way more strength training because I'm a strength training is my that's how I started. So like the
Yeah.
weightlifting, but the body weight stuff, I did learn from him. And nobody owns a movement. Like he doesn't own running, he
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
own any movement. So that's why it's not, you can't just call things. But I always say pose, I always say fall, I always say pull.
Right.
And when people come into our program, boy, they're coming in, it's like a time warp. They're still coming in from where I was when I met him 20 years ago. And I'm not
And
kidding.
that's
Like
what's
we,
amazing. Yeah. It's
they're in,
totally. Yeah.
yeah, they're still their injury. They're still about body parts. And so, anyway, that was long winded.
No, no,
I
that
just
was
wanted to let
perfect. That was
everyone know
perfect.
that,
I
yeah,
wanted to, yeah, that was perfect. I just wanted people to understand when we talk about pose, look up Dr. Romanoff. He's
yeah,
brilliant. I've read his, uh, tried to read his books. He is Russian, so he can, and he's very technical. So, but I wanted them to understand what makes RunRX and your coaching different, and it isn't different from the pose method. It's what that's what I meant by like how you cue, how you treat our students. That's what
no,
makes
I've
it
never,
special.
like, to be honest, I mean, I could tell you that there's probably less than 10 people worldwide that really have taught as long as I have.
Right.
And just this method, not in general. But
No,
I'm
no, no,
telling you, it's
no.
like even I've been really lucky because I also still coach in a gym, right? And just in a CrossFit gym. And I've always lived, like, I feel I've always lived two worlds. I've lived the strength side and then I've lived the running side. And it's funny because I've never been on the popular side,
Yeah,
but I've
yeah,
been
you've
on the
always been a
successful side in the sense that everyone that ends up coming, like when I lived in Austin, people would only come see me if they were at their wits' end, like their shin hurt
yeah.
so bad, or their heel, or their hip, or whatever it was, and they tried everything else. And they'd always say that to me, I've tried everything. So then I'd say, well, what
Mhm.
does that mean? I've rolled it, I've stretched it, I've iced it, I've gone to PT, I've gone to chiro, I've had people that have done PFP, I've had people that have done the shots. I mean, it's amazing what people will go through. And then they show up and they're like, now fix it.
Well, we
But
can
just so
wrap it
you
up
know,
here,
guys,
but
none of that deters us because we want to help you. Like at the end of the day, my goal to get into this was to help people run pain free. And I don't mind going through a little bit of pushback in the beginning. I've
yeah.
been pushed back a lot, and I'm fully confident that if we can help you, we are happy to. And if you're willing to put the practice in, we will make you happier in your running.
Absolutely. And that's how I was going to wrap it up. So that's a perfect segue. So I was going to wrap it up by saying, guys, we have asked if we have a guarantee. And what I will tell you is that the guarantee is if you don't quit, it will work. Period.
Right?
The only people that have ever like had it not work for them have said, I can't do this, I can't afford it, or I'm busy, or it's I love what you're doing, but maybe the style, maybe we're just a little too funky, I think that's fine.
We're hard.
But
Listen, I'm who
it's
I am.
not
I'm a
easy.
nice person, but the work is hard. I will, but it's
Yeah,
it's your body. Your
absolutely.
body. Yeah.
So hopefully this answered your question. If you are dealing with either an injury or a condition, and you've maybe been told you can't run or you shouldn't run and you have a passion to, we hope you'll give us a try, like Alex did, just $99, and come in and be coachable and give us a try. And it's funny, we've also been challenged. I've had people say, I'm going to be the one that it doesn't work with. And even she couldn't say that now.
Right.
So I don't want you to I hope that if you do challenge us and say I'm going to be the one that it's not going to work for, you have to realize you still have to do the work. But I feel pretty confident we're 100%, right? So I feel pretty confident that if you do the work, you will get results. So we hope you'll join us in the membership. Go to runrx.fit, hit the work with me button, and you'll be able to sign up for that. And we would love to have you in the membership. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRX podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.